My name is Hannah, and I'm 34 years old. 3 months ago, I made a decision that changed everything. I walked away from my family business, my six-figure salary, and the toxic web of conditional love that had defined my entire adult life. But let me start at the beginning. The moment that shattered my world happened on a Tuesday morning in June. I was sitting in my childhood kitchen, watching my 8-year-old daughter Emma play with her younger brother Jake. The sunlight streamed. Through the same yellow curtains my mother had hung 20 years ago, everything looked normal, peaceful even. Then my mother said the words that would haunt me forever. "Hannah, you know we love you, but we need to talk about the family vacation this summer." She paused, stirring her coffee with that familiar silver spoon. "We've decided that Emma and Jake can come, but they'll stay in the guest cottage with the other second-class family members." Second-class family members. Those words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my chest tighten, my hands shake slightly as I gripped my own coffee mug. Emma looked up from her coloring book, her bright green eyes curious but innocent. She had no idea what my mother meant, but I did. "You see, Emma and Jake aren't just my children. They're my adopted children. I brought them into our family when Emma was 5 and Jake was 3 after their biological parents died in a car accident. Emma was my best friend's daughter, and when Sarah passed away, there was never a question in my mind about what I needed to do. But apparently, there had always been a question in my family's mind about where these children belonged. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you about this life-changing decision, hit like and subscribe to hear more real stories about family loyalty and betrayal that might just change how you see your own relationships. The guest cottage my mother referenced was where my family housed what they considered the less important relatives during gatherings. It was small, cramped, and had a leaky roof that nobody ever bothered to fix. The message was clear. My children weren't really part of the family. I looked at Emma, who had started humming while she colored a picture of a house with a rainbow over it. Jake was building a tower with wooden blocks, his tongue sticking out in concentration. These weren't just any children to me. They were my world, my purpose, my greatest joy. But to my family, they were charity cases. Burdens I had taken on that somehow diminished my status in the family hierarchy. "Mom," I said, my voice barely steady. "What do you mean by second-class family members?" She sighed, as if I was being deliberately obtuse. "Hannah, you know what I mean. The biological grandchildren get the main house. Emma and Jake can stay, with your cousin's stepchildren and your uncle's girlfriend's kids from her first marriage." The casual way she said it, like she was discussing the weather, made it even worse. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment comment. This was a calculated decision, a policy that had been discussed and agreed upon behind closed doors. "They're not biological, Hannah," my father chimed in from behind his newspaper. "We love them, of course, but family is family." Family is family. I had heard variations of this phrase my entire life, usually when someone wanted to justify treating people differently based on some arbitrary standard. But this time, it was about my children. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the wooden floor. Emma looked up at me with concern. "Mommy, are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart," I managed to say, though nothing felt fine at all. That morning, I realized that the family I had been desperately trying to belong to for 34 years had never truly accepted me either. And now they were extending that conditional acceptance to my children. But here's what my family didn't know. I had been documenting everything. Every slight comment, every exclusion, every moment when Emma and Jake were treated as lesser than their cousins. I had been telling myself it was just personality differences, just the way families work. I was wrong, and I was done. The decision I made that Tuesday morning would cost me everything I thought I valued. My job, my financial security, my relationship with my parents and siblings. But it would save something infinitely more precious, my children's sense of worth and belonging. Have you ever reached a moment where you realized that staying meant losing yourself? Where love required you to walk away from everything familiar? That's where my real story begins. To understand why this moment was so devastating, you need to know about the golden cage I had been living in for years. My family owns Morrison Construction, a company my grandfather built from nothing in the 1960s. We specialize in luxury home, development, and by the time I joined the business after college, we were worth several $1,000,000. Success, however, came with strings attached. My father, Robert Morrison, is 68 years old and still runs the company with an iron fist. He's a man who measures worth in profit margins and bloodlines. Tall, silver-haired, and commanding. He has this way of making you feel like you're perpetually disappointing him, even when you're doing exactly what he asked. My mother, Patricia, is the family's social coordinator and keeper of traditions. She plans every gathering, remembers every birthday, and maintains the facade that we're a close, loving family. She's beautiful in that polished way that comes from never having to worry about money, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a wardrobe that costs more than most people's cars. Then there's my older brother, Michael. He's the golden child, the heir apparent, the one who married his college sweetheart and produced 3 biological grandchildren in perfect succession. Michael works in the family business, but has never had to prove himself the way I did. His wife, Jennifer, fits seamlessly into the family dynamic, hosting dinner parties and joining my mother's charity committees. My younger sister, Rachel, took a different path. She's a successful attorney in another state, which my parents respect even though she's not in the family business. She visits during holidays with her husband and their twin daughters, and everyone treats her like she's temporarily away rather than permanently distant. And then there's me, the middle child who tried harder than anyone to earn a place at the table. After Sarah died, I was 26 and completely unprepared for instant motherhood. Emma was grieving, confused, and had nightmares every night for months. Jake was barely more than a toddler, calling for his mama and not understanding why she wasn't coming back. My family's reaction was telling from the beginning. "Are you sure you want to do this?" my mother asked when I announced my decision to adopt them. "You're so young, and these children have trauma. Maybe it would be better if they went to a family more equipped to handle their issues." But I knew these kids. I had been Emma's honorary aunt since she was born. I had babysat them, taken them to parks, been present for birthday parties, and scraped knees. When Sarah was dying in the hospital, she made me promise to love them like my own. So I fought for them. I navigated the adoption process, found the best child therapists, and rearranged my entire life around their needs. It took 2 years to finalize the adoption, 2 years of home visits and court appearances and sleepless nights. Through it all, I threw myself into the family business with renewed determination. I worked 60-hour weeks, closed $1,000,000 deals, and earned a reputation as one of the most effective project managers in the company. I thought if I could just prove my value professionally, it would translate to acceptance for my unconventional family. My salary reflected my contributions. At 34, I was earning $180,000 a year plus bonuses. I had my own office, my own team, and my own projects. On paper, I was successful and valued. But success in my family came with unspoken rules. Family vacations were planned around Michael's children's schedules. Holiday traditions centered on biological grandchildren. Gift-giving followed a hierarchy that placed adopted children firmly at the bottom. Emma and Jake adapted better than I did. They called my parents Grandma and Grandpa, played with their cousins, and seemed oblivious to the subtle differences in treatment. Or maybe they weren't oblivious. Maybe they were just more resilient than I gave them credit for. The breaking point had been building for years. Little comments about real grandchildren, exclusions from certain family photos, the way conversations stopped when Emma and Jake entered rooms, as if the adults had been discussing something inappropriate for outside ears. I told myself I was being oversensitive. That family dynamics are complicated, and I should be grateful for what acceptance we had received. I convinced myself that love looked different in different families, and I should adapt rather than demand. Change. But children see everything, even when we think they don't, and they internalize messages about their worth long before they have words to express what they're feeling. That Tuesday morning, when my mother casually relegated my children to second-class status, I realized I had been complicit in their devaluation for years. The weeks following that devastating conversation became a careful dance of observation and documentation. I started paying attention to things I had been unconsciously overlooking for years, like the way my mother's voice changed when she talked about Michael's children versus mine. When she spoke about her real grandchildren, her tone was warm, proud, full of affection. When she mentioned Emma and Jake, her voice became polite but distant, like she was discussing acquaintances rather than family members, or how family photos were arranged. The biological grandchildren were always in the center, with Emma and Jake positioned on the edges, sometimes even partially cropped out of casual shots. I found a folder on my mother's computer labeled Real Family Photos that contained hundreds of images with my children edited out entirely. But the most painful discovery came when I was helping clean out my grandmother's old room. I found a family tree my mother had been working on for years, a beautiful hand-drawn document tracing our lineage back 4 generations. Emma and Jake's names were written in pencil at the bottom, with a note that said, "Adopted, not blood relations," in my mother's careful handwriting. If you've ever felt like you're going crazy because your reality doesn't match what everyone around you insists is true, you'll understand what those weeks felt like. I started questioning everything, wondering if I was imagining problems that didn't exist. Then I had a conversation with my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, that changed my perspective entirely. Emma and Jake were playing in our backyard while I was gardening. Mrs. Chen, a retired teacher in her 70s, came over to chat. She's one of those people who sees everything and says exactly what she thinks. Those children light up when they see you, she said, watching Emma show Jake how to catch fireflies. But I notice they're different when your parents visit. I stopped digging and looked at her. Different how? Quieter, more careful, like they're trying to take up less space. She paused, studying my face. Children know when they're not. Wanted, Hannah, they always know. Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I had been so focused on protecting Emma and Jake from obvious rejection that I hadn't noticed the subtle ways they were adapting to being tolerated rather than celebrated. That night, I called my college roommate, Jessica, who lives across the country. Jessica has always been brutally honest with me, even when I don't want to hear it. Hannah, she said after I described the family vacation situation, this isn't new behavior. You've been telling me stories about your family's treatment of Emma and Jake for years. The only thing that's changed is that they're not bothering to hide it anymore. She was right. I scrolled through years of text messages between us, finding dozens of examples I had dismissed as misunderstandings or personality conflicts. The pattern was undeniable. Meanwhile, at work, things were getting complicated in a different way. My father had been hinting about succession planning, about who would eventually take over different aspects of the business. In meetings, he would make comments about family legacy and blood loyalty that felt increasingly pointed. During one particularly tense project review, he looked directly at me and said, "The thing about family businesses is that family comes first. always. People who understand that are the ones who succeed here long term. Michael nodded approvingly, but I felt like my father was delivering a warning rather than sharing wisdom. The final piece of the puzzle came when I overheard a phone conversation between my parents that I wasn't meant to hear. I had arrived early for Sunday dinner and was putting my purse in the hall closet when I heard my mother's voice from the kitchen. "I just don't understand why she's making such a big deal about the cottage," she was saying. "Those children should be grateful. We're including them at all. It's not like they're really part of the family." "Hannah's always been too emotional," my father replied. "She takes on these projects and then expects everyone else to treat them like they matter as much as actual family. The business is the same way. She thinks because she works hard, she deserves the same consideration as Michael. Projects. That's what they called my children. Projects." I stood in that hallway, my heart pounding, finally understanding the truth I had been avoiding for years. In my family's eyes, Emma, Jake, and I were all expendable. We were valued only for what we contributed, not for who we were. But here's what they didn't know. I had been building my own safety net for months. I had been taking business development, courses, networking with competitors, and quietly exploring my options outside the family company. Because deep down, I think I always knew this day would come. The confrontation happened 3 weeks later, during what was supposed to be a routine family business meeting. We were discussing the upcoming summer projects when my father made an announcement that changed everything. "We've decided to restructure the succession plan," he said, adjusting his reading glasses as he looked at a document in front of him. "Michael will take over as president within the next 5 years, and we're creating a new position for family. Members who want to remain involved but aren't in direct leadership." He looked directly at me. "Hannah, we think you'd be perfect for our new family relations coordinator role. You'd handle charitable giving, family events, and community outreach. The salary would be $85,000, which is very generous for that type of position." The room went completely silent. Michael stared at his hands, clearly uncomfortable, but not surprised. Rachel looked confused, glancing between our parents and me. I felt like I was watching this happen to someone else. A $95,000 pay cut. A demotion disguised as a restructure. A job that sounded suspiciously like being the family's event planner. "I'm sorry," I said carefully, "but I need clarification. Are you saying that my current role as senior project manager is being eliminated?" My mother jumped in with that bright fake smile she used when she was trying to manage difficult conversations. "Oh, Hannah, it's not elimination. It's evolution. You're so good with people, and this role would let you spend more time with Emma and Jake." There it was. The assumption that because I was a single mother, I must want to work less, earn less, contribute less. The assumption that my adopted children made me less committed to professional success. "And what qualifications does Michael have for the president role that I don't?" I asked, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. My father's face hardened. "Michael has been with the company longer, and he has a stable family situation. Leadership requires certain qualities that—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "That come from understanding what real family commitment looks like." Real family commitment. After 8 years of working 60-hour weeks, of bringing Emma and Jake to office events so I could be present for both family and business obligations, of missing school plays and soccer games to close deals that made our family millions. "I see," I said quietly. Then I stood up, walked to the conference room door, and closed it firmly. "Let's have an honest conversation," I said, turning back to face them. "This isn't about qualifications or commitment. This is about the fact that you've never considered Emma, Jake, and me to be real family members. This is about punishment for not conforming to your definition of acceptable family structure. Hannah, that's not... My mother started. Let me finish. My voice was stronger now, fueled by years of suppressed anger and hurt. For 8 years, I've pretended not to notice the way you treat my children differently. I've made excuses for the comments, the exclusions, the casual cruelty disguised as family tradition. I walked over to the family photo hanging on the conference room wall, the one where Emma and Jake were strategically positioned behind other people, barely visible. But this morning I realized something important. You're not just hurting me with this behavior. You're teaching my children that love is conditional, that belonging must be earned, and that they're somehow less valuable than their cousins because of circumstances beyond their control. My father's face was getting red, the way it always did when someone challenged his authority. Hannah, you're being dramatic. We've always treated those children well. Those children, I repeated slowly. Not your grandchildren, not family members. Those children. I pulled out my phone and started reading from the notes I had been keeping. July 15th. Mom refers to Emma's art project as cute for an adopted kid. August 3rd. Dad tells Michael that real family legacy matters most. August 20th. Family photo session where Emma and Jake are asked to step aside for immediate family pictures. The room was deadly quiet now. Rachel was staring at our parents with horror, finally understanding what had been happening right in front of her. I have 47 documented instances over the past 6 months, I continued. 47 times when my children were reminded that they don't truly belong here, and I have been complicit in this by staying silent. I walked back to my chair and gathered my papers. So here's what's going to happen. I'm resigning from Morrison Construction, effective immediately. I'm also declining any future invitations to family events where Emma and Jake are treated as second-class participants. My mother gasped, Hannah, you can't be serious. This is your family. This is your inheritance. No, I said, looking directly at her. This is a business built on conditional love and arbitrary hierarchies. My family is Emma and Jake and the people who love us unconditionally. I headed toward the door, then turned back one final time. And just so we're clear, I'm taking my clients with me. Walking out of that conference room was the scariest thing I had ever done. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely start my car. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, alternating between feeling completely empowered and absolutely terrified. I had just walked away from financial security, family relationships, and everything I thought defined my identity. But for the first time in years, I could breathe. The immediate aftermath was brutal. Within hours, my parents had called Rachel, Michael, and several extended family members to share their version of events. My phone started buzzing with text messages, ranging from supportive to condemning. Rachel called me that evening. Hannah, I had no idea it was that bad, she said, her voice tight with emotion. I live so far away, I only see everyone during holidays. I thought the differences I noticed were just, I don't know, personality, things. I told myself the same thing for years, I admitted. What are you going to do now? That was the question, wasn't it? I had burned every bridge I could think of in a single afternoon. But here's what I discovered about myself. When you're fighting for your children, you find strength you didn't know existed. Within a week, I had contacted every client I had worked with over the past 5 years. I explained that I was starting my own consulting firm specializing in luxury home project management. I was honest about my situation, professional about my capabilities, and confident about my ability to serve their needs. 12 clients followed me immediately. $12 million projects that represented enough work to keep me busy for the next 2 years. Starting Morrison Project Solutions from my dining room table while homeschooling Emma and Jake during the pandemic was challenging, but it was also liberating. For the first time in my adult life, I was building something that belonged entirely to me. The hardest part wasn't the business logistics. It was explaining to Emma and Jake why we wouldn't be spending holidays with Grandma and Grandpa anymore. "Did we do something wrong?" Emma asked one evening while we were making dinner together. I knelt down to her eye level, taking her small hands in mine. "You did absolutely nothing wrong," I said firmly. "Sometimes adults make decisions that hurt people they love, and when that happens, other adults have to make hard choices to protect the people who matter most." "Are we the people who matter most?" Jake asked from his perch on the kitchen counter. "You are everything that matters," I told him, and I meant it completely. The first year was challenging financially. I had to learn to live without the safety net of a guaranteed salary, to manage client relationships independently, and to balance single motherhood with entrepreneurship. But every difficult day was easier than the years I had spent walking on eggshells, trying to earn acceptance that was never going to come. If you're in a situation where you feel like you're constantly proving your worth to people who should love you unconditionally, I want you to know that you deserve better. Please hit the like button if this story is resonating with you, and subscribe for more real stories about choosing yourself and your children over toxic family dynamics. 1 year later, Morrison Project Solutions had 15 employees and had completed 32 luxury home projects. I was earning more than I ever had at my family's company, working with clients who valued my expertise and treated me with respect. But the real transformation wasn't financial. It was seeing Emma and Jake flourish in an environment where they were celebrated rather than tolerated. Emma started taking art classes and discovered she had real talent for painting. She created a series of family portraits that hang in our living room. Beautiful images of the three of us with enormous smiles and rainbow backgrounds. Jake joined a soccer team and made friends with kids who invited him to birthday parties and sleepovers. He stopped asking why some family members didn't visit anymore and started talking excitedly about his teammates and coaches. The change in their confidence was remarkable. They stood straighter, laughed louder, and stopped apologizing for taking up space. My relationship with Rachel has actually grown stronger. She visits us now instead of meeting at our parents' house, and she's become a true aunt to Emma and Jake. She's also started setting her own boundaries with our parents. Inspired by watching me choose my children over conditional acceptance, Michael and I haven't spoken since that day in the conference room. Sometimes I miss the brother I thought I had, but I don't miss the dynamic we were trapped in. As I'm recording this today, it's been 18 months since I walked out of that conference room. Emma is now 10 and Jake is 7, and they're thriving in ways I never imagined possible when we were still trying to fit into spaces that weren't designed for us. Last month, Emma won a regional art competition with a painting she titled My Real Family. It's a portrait of the three of us with our arms around each other, standing in front of our house with our dog, Murphy, who we adopted 6 months after I started my business. The colors are vibrant, joyful, and completely authentic to who we are when we're not performing for people who will never truly accept us. Jake scored his first soccer goal 2 weeks ago, and the pure joy on his face when he ran to hug me afterward reminded me why every difficult decision was worth it. He's confident now in a way he never was when he was constantly measuring himself against cousins who were treated as more valuable. My business is thriving beyond my wildest expectations. Morrison Project Solutions now has 22 employees, and we've expanded into commercial development projects. I'm earning almost 3 times what I made at my family's company, but more importantly, I'm building something based on my values rather than maintaining someone else's legacy. But this story isn't really about financial success or business growth. It's about the courage to choose love over fear, authenticity over acceptance, and your children's well-being over your own comfort. If you're watching this and recognizing parts of your own family dynamic, I want you to know that you're not imagining things. Trust your instincts. Trust your observations. Trust your children's reactions when they come home from family gatherings quieter than when they left. Have you ever felt like you were working twice as hard as everyone around you just to earn basic respect? Have you ever noticed that your children are treated differently by family members who claim to love them equally? If you're nodding right now, please leave a comment sharing your experience. This community is built on real stories, from real people who understand what it feels like to choose difficult truth over comfortable lies. 3 months ago, I received an unexpected phone call from my mother. She had been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer and was reaching out to all her children for support. For a moment, I felt that familiar pull to rush back into the family dynamic to prove my love through service and sacrifice. But then I remembered Emma's face when she overheard her grandmother call her a project. I remembered Jake asking why he couldn't sit with his cousins during family photos. I remembered years of making excuses for behavior that hurt my children. Every single day. I sent flowers to the hospital with a note expressing my hopes for her recovery. I offered to help connect her with the best oncologists I knew through my business network. But I didn't rush back into the family fold. And I didn't expose Emma and Jake to people who had made it clear they would always be considered outsiders. She made a full recovery, and I'm genuinely grateful for that. But boundaries aren't walls you build in anger and tear down when circumstances change. Boundaries are protective barriers you maintain consistently to preserve what matters most. Rachel tells me that my parents ask about us sometimes, that they seem to miss having us at family gatherings. I think they might be starting to understand what they lost when they chose rigid family hierarchies over inclusive love. But understanding and changing are two different things. Would I go back if they apologized and promised to treat Emma and Jake differently? I honestly don't know. What I do know is that my children will never again be in situations where they have to earn basic human dignity from people who are supposed to love them unconditionally. To everyone watching this, especially parents who are struggling with similar family dynamics, your children's emotional safety is worth more than maintaining relationships with people who make them feel small. It's worth more than financial security, social acceptance, or family tradition. The hardest part about walking away from toxic family relationships is grieving what you thought you had while simultaneously feeling relief about what you're leaving behind. Both feelings can be true at the same time. If this story has impacted you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe for more real stories about choosing your children over convenience. And let me know in the comments what boundaries you've had to set in your own life to protect the people you love most. Your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to see it. Your children's worth isn't determined by their biological connection to people who should love them simply because they exist. Sometimes the most profound act of love is walking away from everything familiar to create something better.